My brother didn't ruin my life in one dramatic moment. He did it slowly, carefully, in ways that were easy to dismiss until the damage was already everywhere. For a long time, no one saw it. That was the worst part. If he had been cruel in public, if he had screamed, threatened me, or done something obvious, at least people would have understood why I pulled away. But he was smarter than that. He was charming when people were watching, calm when things got tense, and always believable enough to make me look unstable whenever I reacted. That didn't happen by accident. He built that image piece by piece, and he used it against me every chance he got. Growing up, we looked normal from the outside. That was why it took me so long to recognize what was happening. At first, it was little things. He would retell a story and quietly change one detail so I sounded rude, reckless, or selfish. He would say he was joking if I corrected him. He would tell someone not to take me seriously because I was in one of my moods. He said it lightly, with a smile, like he was helping people understand me. I did not realize then that he was teaching everyone to doubt me before I even spoke. By the time I noticed the pattern, it had already spread. People interrupted me more. They second-guessed my version of events. They reacted to me like they expected conflict before I said a single word. I kept asking myself the same question. Why does everything feel harder around the people who know him? It would take me far too long to accept the truth. My brother was rewriting how everyone saw me. And he was doing it so carefully that I could not prove it without sounding like the unstable one he had already painted me to be. At first, I kept trying to explain it away. I told myself he was immature, competitive, maybe insecure, but not malicious. I wanted a version of the story where this was accidental, because the alternative was harder to face. The alternative meant accepting that someone who had known me my whole life understood exactly how to undermine me. That thought was unbearable, so I ignored it as long as I could. But the signs kept piling up. Friends would pull away after spending time with him. Relatives would reference things I had supposedly said even though I had never said them. Conversations would start with tension already built into them, like I had walked in halfway through an argument I did not know existed. When I tried to defend myself, the reactions were always the same. People would look uncomfortable. They would say I seemed upset, or that maybe I was reading too much into things. That was the trap. Every time I tried to clear my name, I looked exactly like the person he had told them I was. Emotional, intense, defensive. He never needed to attack me directly because he had already shaped the lens through which other people saw me. One moment still stands out. A family friend confronted me over a comment I had supposedly made about her daughter. It was cruel, pat too, and completely unlike anything I would say. I denied it immediately, but she was so confident that I almost questioned my own memory. Then she mentioned that my brother had heard it and thought she deserved to know. That was the first time something inside me went cold instead of panicked. I stopped asking myself whether I was imagining it. I stopped looking for innocent explanations. Because there it was. He had not just repeated something wrong. He had delivered it in a way that made him look noble while making me look cruel. And he had done it with the confidence of someone who knew people would believe him. That realization changed everything. Because once I understood that this was intentional, I also understood how long it had probably been happening without me noticing. If someone was quietly turning people against you like this, would you confront them right away? Or stay silent and start gathering proof first? Comment your move. After that, I started seeing the damage everywhere. My reputation had changed in rooms I had never entered. There were conversations about me that I had never been part of. Conclusions about me that I had never had the chance to challenge. And assumptions about my character that felt too specific to be random. I could trace so many of them back to him. He often arrived first with a warning about how I might react or why something I said should be taken carefully. He acted like he was managing me, translating me, softening me for other people. The truth was uglier. He was controlling the narrative before I ever got a chance to speak. The most devastating part was what it did to my own sense of reality. I began replaying conversations after they ended, wondering whether I had sounded worse than I thought. I started censoring myself, editing my tone, trying to appear calm enough to overcome the image he had built. Nothing worked. The more careful I became, the more unnatural I felt. And the more unnatural I felt, the easier it was for people to think something was off about me. That is what manipulation does when it is subtle enough. It does not just hurt your relationships. It changes your relationship with yourself. I stopped trusting my instincts. I stopped speaking up because I was afraid of confirming whatever people had already been told about me. Then came the real losses. A job referral disappeared after someone heard concerns about how difficult I was to work with. A friendship I had valued for years faded after my brother became closer to them. Invitations dried up. Group chats went quiet. I felt myself becoming a problem people managed rather than a person they knew. And every time I looked at my brother, he seemed completely untouched by the damage. He was still relaxed, still liked, still believable. Either way, the result was the same. My life kept shrinking, while his version of me kept expanding. I did confront him more than once. I need to say that. Because people love to imagine that truth reveals itself neatly if you just ask the right question. It does not. Manipulative people rarely panic when they are challenged. They pivot. They stall. They make you doubt the entire conversation by the time it ends. That was exactly what he did. The first time I brought it up directly, he looked surprised, then concerned, then almost disappointed in me. He asked why I would think something like that and reminded me of times he had defended me in the past, as if that erased everything else. When I pushed harder, he accused me of twisting his intentions. By the end of the conversation, I felt exhausted and stupid, like I had walked in with certainty and left carrying his confusion instead. But one thing changed after those confrontations. I stopped trying to get him to confess. And I started paying attention like someone gathering evidence. I kept screenshots. I saved messages. I wrote down dates, conversations, and contradictions while they were fresh. I noticed how his story shifted depending on who he was talking to. I noticed how often he framed himself as concerned for me right before saying something damaging. I noticed how he used partial truths because they were harder to challenge than outright lies. Once I changed my approach, the pattern became impossible to miss. He did not just want to win arguments. He wanted control. He wanted to be the trusted source, the steady one, the person people turned to when they wanted the real story about me. Realizing that gave me something I had been missing for years. Clarity. I was not dealing with random misunderstandings. I was dealing with a campaign. And if I wanted my life back, I would need to stop reacting emotionally to every new piece of damage and start dismantling the system that made him believable in the first place. The turning point came because he made one mistake. He got too confident. Once someone has been believed for long enough, they start assuming they always will be. That was what happened to him. He told one version of a story to the wrong person, and that person happened to compare it with screenshots I had already saved. Suddenly, the details did not line up. The timeline was wrong. The wording changed. And for the first time, somebody else saw what I had been trying to explain for years. I did not rush in dramatically. I did not make a speech. I simply laid out what I had. Messages. Dates. Contradictions. One incident can be dismissed. 10 cannot. Once people saw the full picture, the shift was immediate and strange. No one said, "You were right all along," at least not in those words. But I could feel the change in the questions they asked, the pauses before they answered him, the way people started coming to me directly instead of accepting his version first. The truth did not explode into the room. It spread quickly. That was enough. My brother tried to recover. He said he had been misunderstood. He claimed he was only trying to help. He implied I had manipulated the situation by saving messages and keeping records, as if preparation itself were suspicious. But by then, the mask had already cracked. Once people see one lie clearly, they start revisiting everything else with new eyes. I watched that happen in real time. It did not erase what he had done. It did not restore the lost opportunities, the damaged relationships, or the years I spent doubting myself. But it gave me something more important than revenge. It gave me my reality back. I was no longer fighting to be believed in a system he controlled. When the truth finally became undeniable, I expected to feel victorious. I did not. I felt tired. Relieved. Yes, but mostly tired. There is a special kind of exhaustion that comes from surviving long-term manipulation, especially when it comes from family. People assume exposure solves everything, but it does not. It simply ends the argument over whether the damage was real. What comes after is grief. Grief for the time you lost, for the relationships that did not survive, for the version of yourself that had to become hyper-aware just to stay safe. I also had to grieve something harder. The fact that my brother was never going to become the person I wanted him to be. He was not going to apologize in a meaningful way or hand me back the years he spent destabilizing my life. Once I accepted that, walking away stopped feeling extreme. It felt necessary. I cut contact. Not to punish him, but because I finally understood that truth alone does not make someone safe. A person can be exposed and still be harmful. Distance became the boundary I should have built much earlier. And with that distance came something I had almost forgotten was possible. Peace. My brother ruined years of my life. That part is true. He damaged my relationships, my reputation, and my trust in my own voice. But he did not ruin the part of me that knew something was wrong. He did not ruin the part that kept records, kept observing, and kept waiting for the moment the truth could breathe. Exposing him did not magically fix everything, but it ended his control over the story. And walking away forever was not me giving up. It was me refusing to spend another year defending myself against someone who had built his sense of power around making me disappear. So be honest, is exposing someone like this enough? Or is cutting them off forever the real win? Drop your answer below. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.